if the starting point you're trying to do is a data strategy, how easy is it to start forming that data strategy, and how do you give it some structure so that it can then be used long term?
I think of this as two ends of a bookshelf, right? So you have your starting point, which is where you have technology, that could be system input or a user input layer, and then you have to consider your output. What is it you want to get from your data, either from a predictive perspective or from a user experience perspective? And then taking those kind of two sort of macro inputs, you can then start forming your data model, structuring it in such a way that you can derive the outputs that you want, and also then work with your back end so that you can then get the inputs that you require.
Mohammed, once you have that input that you require, you've got loads of data, you've got a task that you're trying to achieve. How do you decide what's, and I'm not talking here about the integrity aspect, how do you decide what data is redundant and what you need? Because if you have a huge swathe of data, surely it can be a little bit overwhelming to know where to start and what to ignore so you don't go down the wrong road.
Well, I think it all starts with the purpose. I mean, I say this day in, day out in our business, as well as with our clients. The discussion becomes of that, I call it data sculpting. So basically you have a big mass of data, just like a big pile of rock. And then to be able to understand how you want to sculpt it, you need to understand the end game and what's the shape that you want to end up with. So we first start by determining the purpose, and then this will start defining the roadmap of what do I need and what do I not need, in my data model, whichever shape or form it is. And then from there, it starts kind of unfolding like layers of onion to decide how to get from that big blob of data into something structured and well sculpted, used for a specific purpose.
Mohammed, Haouli.
Yeah.
I need to define the two of you. Mohammed, again, same question. From your point of view, what are you thinking about? What do you expect clients to do?
Yeah. So I agree with Mohammed. So actually, you need to have a clear objective, and you need also to look at the organizational reporting and analytics needs. So basically, it's very important to identify what data is important. So by looking at the reporting requirements, by looking at the reporting strategy, by working with all the parties. So basically, you know that in the construction project, it's not only one party working in silos. It's like a collaborative approach where multiple parties working, collaborating in order to deliver a successful project, from contractors, consultants, the owner, the design consultants, and all the parties involved there. So basically coming up with a clear idea in mind that what are the ultimate goal that I need to achieve? What is the reporting requirements? Do I need to track my portfolio, my project status, the cost, the budget, the risk, etc. So basically by identifying these critical data elements that I have, I'll be able to know that this is what I'm going to focus on. This is what I need to have basically my effort from capturing this data, validating this data, all the way along representing this data in a meaningful way so that I can take an informed decisions about it.
Arsen, once that process is starting, who needs to be involved? Because I guess if this is a fairly large project, there must be many people, maybe not even from the same company, that you're trying to get data from. So who would typically you be looking to get involved, and what sort of process do you have to go through to make sure that the data is in good order?
From the involvement perspective, everybody who's contracted needs to be involved, and there has to be clear communication lines between the owner and the supply chain. That's something we're busy setting up at the moment. We have traditional, for example, communication lines, and we're trying to automate more or less on that. So the answer is most of who are contracted need to be involved. And then in terms of processes, we're trying to get it simple, as the gentleman before presenting was saying. A lot of automation can go into sifting through the data and getting you the reports that you're most interested in. Whether you're the client, you're the project management consultant, or the contractor. So from a client's perspective, we're trying to only look at what we're interested in, and at the same time, we're not trying to limit our project management consultants and everybody else down the line to try and get more on top of what we as a client would want to see.
When you're talking to your value chain, your supply chain, Arsen, and you start talking to them about your requirements, is it clear, are people clear what data is? Are people clear of the different forms that data can come in?
The honest answer is no, and we're trying to clarify that on a daily basis. That is because I think there is a leading trail of information, and there is the new methods of doing things that are intertwined in some cases. So we're trying to convert everything to be the leading trail of information to avoid confusion.
So Mohammed, and I'm going to ask Oliver this question as well afterwards. Do you need data scientists? And if you do, what benefits do they bring? And also, you know, where maybe they don't work? So Mohammed, I'll start with you.
I mean, from what I'm seeing in the industry, as a matter of fact, actually, is that the technology is way ahead of our awareness and mentality of how we view data. So yes, I still do believe that we need data scientists, but we need them to, before hiring a data scientist, you need to understand the purpose and why you're hiring them and what you're trying to achieve. Because your data scientist in the end is your mechanic that will be able to kind of put that functionality together. So, I mean, I usually compare a data scientist to a doctor. So if you consider the human body as an efficient organization on its own, every organ is, you know, mimicking a department in a company. The blood circulation across those, you know, departments and the functions would be your data. So the data scientist is that, you know, that regular doctor that you always go to have a checkup with to make sure your blood circulation is flowing properly. So that's what I believe you need a data scientist in our today's industry.
Okay, that's a very visual description, actually. I like that. So, Oliver, for you as well, where do you see them working and where maybe do you have to think slightly differently?
So I have a bit of a yes-no answer to this one. So I think from one perspective, yes, absolutely, we need data scientists. I see a convergence of sectors at the moment. I think the project management space is converging into an information management space where the future of where our sector will go is that clients will expect us just to come in and help them manage data, as it's going to be the data that helps them manage their projects. The part that makes me a little bit hesitant is that when an organization is not always ready to have data scientists, and they can actually cause much more confusion. They may not have they may not be able to contextualize what it is that they're analyzing, and this can be quite dangerous if they're unable to actually interpret the data that they're analyzing in the way that a subject matter expert would. Then that data and information can be used for poor decision making, which is totally the opposite of what we want from the data scientist, which is enhanced decision making.
So in that circumstance then, are you looking at something where maybe data scientists but working closely with an internal expert or a key stakeholder just to make sure that they get to that point?
In most regards, yes, but I'm also looking specifically at people who come from a computer science background but came into construction tend to understand, or data science background who come into construction tend to understand what it is that the data scientist is trying to do, the types of analysis, and able to contextualize better. So I see a slight morphing in the types of skills and people that we're bringing in. Traditionally, it was civil engineering, mechanical, electrical. I see more Komsky, data science, etc.
Mohammed next to me.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so basically there is another perspective that I would like to bring to the table here, that having the technology, I mean, as the gentleman mentioned here, that the technology would help a lot in this area. So basically, as you know, all this data that we're going through, from the point of entering this data, validating it, and taking it through the ultimate goal and representing it. So working with a kind of specialized construction and engineering platform, a smart construction platform, that at the end of the day have years of experience working with a lot of parties, from owners and clients and on the entire supply chain for tens of years. Basically, that has basically shaped the kind of the kind of, I would say, the out of the box, or I would say basically a kind of industry factors or industry KPIs that we have learned from our customers and from our clients. And that also has helped basically building something called a construction intelligent platform that acts as an advisor here. So basically, behind this platform, there is a lot of data scientists. So for example, if I'm talking about from Oracle Construction and Engineering, there are data scientists employed who come from the industry, who has worked extensively with a lot of clients in the region and outside, basically, and then we were able to identify a kind of patterns and identify a critical elements where basically it takes the data of these organizations, of their data, and then run it through a kind of automation, leveraging definitely the AI and the machine learning in order to come up with a kind of predictive analysis in order to say that with this kind of combination, maybe the project can be delayed, or these activities can cause a delay, or these kind of incidents might trigger a kind of like early warning. So that the technology has shaped that, the technology has helped on that, especially that not all the organizations can afford having a data science. So basically, if you rely on a technology, the technology would help you a lot here.
Arsen, is this something you're looking at, data scientists?
Hiring a data scientist as we speak.
Are you?
I wish I didn't. I wish I didn't, because in the ideal world, I think, regardless of the trade or the profession, every one of us needs to be a bit of a data scientist, and do our work using data to the best of our abilities.
So in terms of if you're hiring one, what was the job description that you put through, so you had in your head who you were, the type of person you were looking for?
Do you want me to go through it entirely?
Not the whole thing,
yeah.
but I just thought, did you have a picture in your head of the type of skills and person that you wanted?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, being versatile with a couple of programming languages and understanding, as my colleague said here, the industry. So coming from the industry, not just being an IT programmer, let's say. Understanding construction and how buildings are put together and what data matters. Yeah, we're lucky we found the right person.
Let's talk a little bit about data integrity, because I think that is fundamental. And although we talk about it a lot, but it comes up so often, so I think it's always worth talking. So if I start, Mohammed, with you, and then I'll move around, how hard is the starting point of putting your data in order? And again, I know it's a difficult one to answer, but what sort of timescales are you looking at to try and actually make it? What do you have to think about to make sure it's in order?
Well, the short answer, it's very hard to start with, because it depends on, every person views the same thing differently. We all have data, but each one of us views it differently for a specific different purpose. I mean, an example that I'm using on our current project is looking at asset management and maintenance, right? Each person involved in the process of maintenance, from our client to our contractors to the supply chain, views different things and wants different things out of it. So it will be difficult to kind of determining what's redundant, what's duplicated, what do you need, what you not need, unless you have a common perspective between all of the players to understand what we really want. It has to be a common objective. And from then on, I think everyone speaks of, we want predictive maintenance or predictive asset management. And we want the greatest systems, the greatest sensors, IoT and whatnot. But if we put these data collection nodes, that's the way I call them, or the sensors, and you don't have the infrastructure behind it to kind of cater for handling that data, I think it's a defeated purpose. So looking at a government level, it's a high capital spend on these things. And that's why we need to shape exactly the purpose when it comes to maintenance, is why we maintain, what do we need to maintain, and what condition parameters do we need from every specific asset to kind of funnel it through. And the same example as well applies internally to business intelligence, to any metrics you see and running in any organization. So I think it's the common perspective that starts, and then we start segregating accordingly.
Okay, and Oliver, so Mohammed there was talking about, I guess in some parts what you were talking about there was bias, in terms of making sure there's no bias in that data. Is that something you spend time doing, and how do you make sure that the data you're receiving all the time doesn't have, that bias, and how do you make sure that the people who are inputting it understand why it's important not to put their, personal feelings or whatever into some of the information they input?
It's very hard to remove bias. The only way that we can attempt to look at it is from a statistical standpoint. So there are, let's say, a normal distribution, but some people put it, that distribution becomes slightly skewed. We can start putting measures in place to kind of normalize the data, remove outliers, etc. But on the whole, trying to get sort of, let's say, an unsupervised data model where you have just the raw data that doesn't have bias is very difficult. So it comes in kind of how we process it once we've received the data.
Arsen, now, 7 is going through quite a significant set of ambitious project builds at the moment. So this has to be quite a big pain point for you. You must be thinking about how you're going to use data, what sort of information you're going to be looking for. So again, how are you organizing and putting that in place so that people know the expectations?
It's very challenging. I mean, it took me months to learn the names of all the projects and the locations, to be honest. But again, structuring data is one way to deal with it. I wouldn't say we're perfect, but we're getting there. So structuring it in also different systems, because you having to have that big of a portfolio, you deal with more than one system, and obviously more than one organization per project. So structuring data and standardizing it as much as possible, both in terms of data management and also procurement, the products and everything else that make up your projects, is something that we're going through right now to help deal with that.
Okay, and then Mohammed, how are people's needs changing? And I will actually ask a couple other people that question as well, but how do you see people's needs around data changing? They must be getting more ambitious and expecting more than they used to a few years ago.
Yeah. So actually, yesterday I was like in a discussion. I was in a session with the PropTech team there, and then at the end, like we concluded that it's time now to raise the expectations high, because the expectations are getting high. The technology is getting advanced. The projects are getting sophisticated. There is a tons of data. There are a lot of different data sources and data sets, basically. So basically, yeah, I mean, the people need is now they are demanding, and they have the right to demand, because I mean, we're going through a wave of like, there are a lot of advancement in this industry, and the technology is helping there. So why not to demand, and why not basically to aim for the best, in my opinion.
And then Oliver, how are you using it differently? Are there any examples that you're able to give in terms of what you're doing today, in terms of how you're using data that maybe that's a bit different, but also that will take you into the future?
If we take, for example, project scheduling as just a really simple example, and if you go back, let's say 20 odd years, and it was all about people physically drafting, right? So it was a physical process, and then P3 came along at some point, and you had a standalone. Then we went ERP with P5, and then P6, where we started collaborating in a single platform. And then in the mid sort of 2015, 2016, you then people started to get, let's say, more analytics. So, and the evolution that I've seen throughout that time is that, the role of the planner, let's say, was around updating a P6 schedule. Now we're expecting them to be able to kind of do Power BI dashboards and update the P6 schedule. But the way that we're seeing the future is that we're also expecting them to be able to do sort of more predictive analytics, be able to integrate data together. So the type of roles that we're bringing into the industry have changed. So this is something that's ongoing and evolving. And one thing that we're also seeing is that people who aren't keeping up with the levels of change are also struggling to keep up in the industry.
Yeah, I just want to comment about Oliver's point. So, I mean, I totally agree here. So basically, I mean, you're dealing with one data set, which is scheduling. The scheduling alone cannot work and cannot give you like the whole information that you want. So what if like You have scheduling data with the cost data, with the delivery data, basically with the risk data all together, working in tandem, and then basically you have a layer on top of that that can extract this data from all your schedules and the programs that you have built throughout the, let's say, 10 years, and then basically let the kind of the technology look at the patterns and similar patterns and learn from this real data, and then give you a prediction that, let's say, with this combination, this kind of activity, if you execute this activity, then basically the likelihood of getting delayed is 80%, and the expected completion date is this and that. So basically, definitely, I mean, leveraging this wealth of information that you have, and the example that he mentioned about P6 and having a layer on top of that can read that and basically predict is a really crucial in this era that we're living in.
Arsen, are you sort of looking at how you can start to use this in the same way that has been mentioned for predictive as well in your projects? Because again, with so many projects, scheduling has got to be a really big issue.
We are aspiring to do it, but to be honest, we aren't doing it at the moment. We're relying on our project management consultants to help us deal with number of projects that we have and the pace we're going with. So I think as a new organization, and I would like to think we are a relatively new organization, we don't have that past. We're just starting now, and we have the future. And there is a very little that we can predict on our own lessons learned. So we're just learning our lessons as we go. And we're relying on a competent and experienced supply chain that came from all around the world, including Dubai, to help us avoid costly mistakes, hopefully on projects or lessons learned by others rather than our own.
And Mohammed?
I mean, in terms of predicting future and looking at the past, I don't think we will be able to predict an accurate future if you do not have, a lessons learned or a pattern recognition of some sort. An example that we use is we do our internal business intelligence on our entire bidding process and the bidding scheme. So it's kind of a market research where you look at your bid-to-win ratio, how many bids have you lost, how many bids have you won, market prices. So you will have a true indicator, especially in a tough economic time, of the fluctuations that happen. And this strategically, as an organization, will put you in a position to have a foresight and have that better informed decision of how to position yourself in the market. And I think this plays a role across the supply chain and across the industry with clients and consultants and contractors as well.
And actually really important for things like procurement and the supply chain. We have an event around that, and again, often we have professionals there who talk about how they're using the data for predictive analytics. And an example given by one was they use their analytics to understand even what color phone they need to have in what country, because they now understand which color phones are more popular than the others, and they just make sure that they have them in the right place. Yeah. So it really does start to then help that sales cycle.
Just one point here. I think also there is a layer, or there is like another level beyond the predictive analysis, which is the prescriptive analysis here, where basically the technology would tell you, like, if you do this, then the best way to do it is to take that mitigation action. So if you take that action, so basically it will tell you what's the action that you need to take in order to mitigate that kind of risk, or in order to avoid this delay. So I mean, the analytics is going through a multiple levels and advanced levels in this era.
Okay.